something that is very clear to me. I'm in DeFi in order to change the financial world and to make it easier for the end users.
GM Marc, welcome to the show.
GM, can you hear me well?
Yep, I can hear you pretty well. Are we good? Can I?
Yeah, we can go.
Awesome.
You can even record or whatever.
Awesome. So, Marc, tell me something. How did you get into crypto?
You want the real answer or the fake answer?
Whatever you prefer. Whatever.
No,
if you want.
So the real answer is that I heard in the early days that Bitcoin was a way to buy drugs online. So
yeah, so you were just curious.
I was quite curious, so I went to an install Tor and I went to this kind of website, and I ended up not buying drug. So don't buy drug, guys, because it was just too complex. I never managed to actually buy Bitcoin back then, and then I heard about Ethereum in 2015 from a friend. It was not related to drug this time. It was actually related to development, because my good friend, which was a developer, told me about smart contracts and basically hooked me in. And now I'm completely addicted since quite a few years now.
Awesome. What got you in?
I lost you.
Oh, I'm muted. Damn it.
Yeah.
So what got you interested in DeFi? Did you study tech? Did you study finance? Or you just like a nerd?
No. So I was a law major, just like Stani actually. Okay, but Stani is better than me because he actually got the degree, and me law school was so boring that I started to do more and more tech related stuff. And then when I heard about Ethereum, I just drop everything else and just went into it. And I was really interested into finance and other stuff like that. So that was kind of a natural pathway. And in 2016, I went to my first crypto conference, actually, DevCon 2 in Shanghai. And I met a lot of people there. And the early days of DeFi was basically discussed at this point because MakerDAO was working on their protocol that they launched a bit later in 2017, if I'm not wrong, for single collateral live. And then Eggland was launched in 2017 as well. That was quite interesting, and the ancestor of Aave. And then in 2019, I got the best opportunity of my life because Stanley and Jordan, the co-founder of Aave, invited me to help them to convert Atland and pivot it to what will become Aave in 2020.
Awesome. So did you join Aave when it was Lend?
Yeah. So I was basically hired to be part of this transition between Atland and Aave, which happened at the end of 2019.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. So what do you like about DeFi, right? What was your the aha moment for blockchain is good. Yeah, we can buy tokens, we can buy Bitcoin, but these smart contracts and what was that moment? When did you think that?
There's actually two moments like this. The first one was MakerDAO and the Dime, in the sense that I never believed that unless in the far future we will use Bitcoin as money. Because for me, it doesn't make sense. If you believe in Bitcoin and the value proposition of Bitcoin, why would you spend it? If you are if you have any kind of logic, if you have the equivalent of $10 in Bitcoin in your wallet and $10 in a $10 bill in your hand, and you need to buy something that is worth $10, will you use the Bitcoin to buy this thing, or will you use the $10 bill? And if you have any kind of logic and you understood how Bitcoin works, you will always spend the dollars and never the Bitcoin. And so it's a great thing for a store of value and that value of proposition of Bitcoin, but it's a terrible thing to use Bitcoin as money. And back then, in 2016, 17, it was a bit of a bummer because if you want to do finance, you need to have some kind of tool of stability. And back then, most of the volume on centralized exchange, on platforms and things like that, were with Bitcoin pairs. So when you were doing a trade in crypto between a Bitcoin and an altcoin, it was always to trade because you were trading the fact that Bitcoin will remain at least stable compared to dollar, and then the coin you will buy will be outperform Bitcoin. Otherwise, you don't sell your Bitcoin to buy an altcoin. So you can be in a trade where your altcoin would perform Bitcoin, but because Bitcoin went down, you basically lose money in dollar, and it was like quite complex. And when I discovered that stablecoin could work, because all the stablecoin I've done before MakerDAO that were not centralized basically failed, like basically the basic USD, all this kind of stuff from Dan River or whatever. It was a aha moment in the sense that we finally had some actual cash system inside the blockchain. And if you remember the white paper of Satoshi Nakamoto, it describes a peer-to-peer cash system. And to me, like a decentralized stablecoin, it's much closer to a peer-to-peer cash system than what Bitcoin is today. So it was quite interesting. And the second moment like this is when I actually used Compound for the first time. I think it was at the end of 2018 or early days of 2019 when they launched, and I saw on my screen that I was earning like some interest, and that interest was compounding all the time. So it's like some kind of magic moment when you see that you are making money on autopilot. And that's something that is pretty normal now for people in DeFi. But back then, seeing that you deposited like 100 DAI and now you have like 100 DAI and 1 million, like a very small amount of cents, percentage of the cent that has been increased, and next second the same thing, and next second the same thing, is like a magic moment for me. It was brand new. It didn't exist back then.
And because I think I'm not really sure how the financial systems work elsewhere, but like, with our banks, like, we get the interest on like, our savings account. I know it's very bad in US. It's like 0.5 or something percentage, but like, we get around 6 or something. I'm not really sure.
But it's the same thing in Europe. In Europe, like the most common saving system in France, for example, is 0.75%, and they pay you once a year. So if you deposit $100 or 100 euros, you won't see anything in your account until the end of the year, where you will have the blessing to get 75 cents inside your account.
Oh my god, like that's a big deal, right? Oh my god, a bank paid us 0.75 cents. It's cool. I think I'm not really sure, but like even in India, like I think they pay quarterly or something like that, and like you just see like a little bit of money, you felt happy, but like seeing literally compound your money every second must have just felt amazing. That makes sense.
And it was like one of the feature we took for Aave V1. That's something that we really wanted to have on Aave V1 that was actually from Compound Finance, that was a year before Aave. Even if Headland was before Compound, the pivot of Aave happened in the early days of 2020, is to have like this magic number that's go up. And also we took that idea and we basically have in the landing page that big number, which is the market size that go up every second, because we believe, and I really think it's like it's part of this magic moment where you realize these things happen on real time. You don't have to wait a quarter. You don't have to wait a year. It's everything happen on the blockchain. There's a block roughly every 13 to 15 seconds on average. And each time the blockchain updates, the balance of everybody updates. And with Aave, when we created the A tokens, that's something that happened also directly on the token balance. So if you deposit 100 DAI into Aave, no matter the version, because we started doing that at version 1, you will get 100 DAI. And if you refresh your Polygon scan or your Ether scan or your Snowtrace or whatever Explorer, and you see your balance, even 1 second after, you will see that you have 100 DAI and some fraction of a cent. And I think it's pretty powerful to have this continuous yield, because compounding interest is something that is extremely important and powerful. And when you pay continuously, actually your yield is better than compared to when you pay interest only once a year.
This podcast was possible because of our sponsors, Brave and Unstoppable Domains. More about them next. Crypto scams are like box of chocolates. You never know which one you're gonna get. Especially if you're using a crypto wallet, which is a browser extension. You run the risk of attacks like phishing scams, account spoofing, data leaks, and theft. The best way to avoid getting attacked is using Brave Wallet. Brave Wallet is the first secure crypto wallet built directly into a browser, so no extensions required. With Brave Wallet, you can buy, store, send, and swap assets. You can even manage your portfolio and NFTs all in one place. Whether you're new to crypto or a seasoned pro, it's time to switch to Brave Wallet. Download Brave at brave.com/web3WD and click the wallet icon to get started. You know what's the worst part about crypto? These long and complex wallet addresses. They can get so confusing. I know, you hate them too. What if I told you I replaced my long wallet address with dheerajshah.nft? Yeah, that's my name. All thanks to Unstoppable Domains. They're the #1 providers of NFT domains. With Unstoppable Domains, you don't have to worry about renewal fees because you get to keep your NFT domain forever. You can get an NFT domain as well, maybe a .crypto, .nft.x, or something else. Go to unstoppabledomains.com right now and get your NFTs for as low as $5. Mark, for someone who's living under the rock or is have not really explored DeFi much, because I have a lot of audience who are entered through NFTs. What does Aave do? And the most basic when it started was you could borrow and lend using your crypto instead of liquidating, right? You could do that, but it has evolved so much over time, right? So can you give us a brief idea about Aave?
I like to say these days that Aave is a liquidity as a service protocol, in the sense that the Aave protocols that are deployed on 7 different networks are big bags of assets. So people provide liquidity, and that liquidity can be used to be the powerhouse of decentralized finance. It's basically a middleware. It's something you have this vision of money Legos, and I will place Aave at the bottom of the stack. It's like the foundation, the cornerstone, because that liquidity can then be used on other stuff in DeFi. So you described the fact of providing liquidity in order to get a passive income. Obviously, the flip side of that is taking liquidity from the protocol in exchange of having some collateral into the protocol and paying some interest on the liquidity you took. But that's very the basic. That's what was DeFi in 2019 or in 2019. And DeFi evolved a lot over the past few months and years, because you can also use that liquidity not to take a long-term position, but to take an instant position. And that was something that Aave invented with the flash loan. And you can do in one transaction, you can have access to potentially billions of dollars, do whatever you want on the blockchain, and at the end of your transaction, you just provide the liquidity back. And if you did an arbitrage trade, you use the Aave liquidity as a service. You paid a fee to do that, and that's something you can do. With Aave V3, we created the portal feature that allowed to teleport liquidity across network. That's also some kind of weird liquidity technique, because basically you use as a bridge, for example, or as an entity, as Instadap, for example, you will use the liquidity on Aave that are present on several layers and networks, and use that liquidity to provide it on behalf of your users. And then asynchronously, you can settle your credit line. You can also use liquidity in the context of credit litigation. So if you have a bunch of stablecoin and you are just looking for passive income, you have those stablecoin that can be potentially used as collateral in order to take liquidity, but that's not something you want because you just want passive income. So you can basically increase your overall yield by finding a third party in need of liquidity, but that doesn't have collateral, and basically transfer your borrowing power to that third party with a credit delegation vote, and that third party will pay you a premium on top of the interest you pay on that liquidity. That's like some example. Obviously, there's many others, but the real idea of DeFi in 2022 is that liquidity protocol are liquidity as a service protocol. So it's a protocol that have liquidity on it and use it, like people can use that liquidity to be the powerhouse of decentralized finance.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice explanation, and I think we got a nice clip to understand, like, what's the Aave ecosystem, or, like, how does it work, which we'll be posting. Marc, I just want to ask you a question, like, in few words, or, like, in whatever words you want to explain, like, how has DeFi evolved from the time when, like, MakerDAO came and then Compound happened, like, or then we can call it DeFi summer, to DeFi 2.0, to, like, we're in 2022, right? Like, so how do you see this evolution? What's your take on it?
Well, the first thing is to realize how simple things have become. Because I remember, like, single collateral DAI, like the first version of MakerDAO, and basically you started the only collateral in MakerDAO to generate the single collateral DAI was it, but it was not compatible because it is not a ERC20. It's like the native asset of Ethereum. Obviously, the other blockchain were not available at this point. And so you had to convert your ETH into wet, so WETH. It's something that is super simple today because you can just go to Uniswap and swap your ETH to WETH, and it's just done. But back then, it was not Uniswap was not existing at all. So you had to manually call the smart contract to convert your ETH to WETH, and then your WETH had to be converted into PET, which is like pool it, a concept that doesn't exist anymore. And the ratio between WETH and PETH was like changing over time for any kind of reason that was relevant to MakerDAO back then. And then that PETH was allowing you to to use that as collateral into a DAI vault to borrow some DAI. So that was like quite a complex system. And when you compare that to using Aave V3 today, to use Uniswap today, to use CDAO, because I see them, they are in the Twitter space, I salute them, to use TimeSwap, I see them as well, that is building cool stuff in the future. It's much easier today but it's still quite complex compared to what we can do and what we can build. And it's not because we did a lot of progress for the past 2 years that we should stop there. And what is quite interesting is that you have more and more fiat to yield option. That's something that we created at Aave with the integration of on-ramps such as Transact, Wire, and Ramp Network. It was back in 2021 for Aave V2. The idea that you can convert some dollar directly into ADAI or to AUSDC into your wallet. You have more and more options that allows you to do that. One good example is on DeFi, which is a new protocol that is working directly on making DeFi more easy. But there's still a lot to do to make sure that we can include more people into decentralized finance and not just engineers and nerds.
Yeah, that does make sense. That does make sense, right? And tell me something, like, how does DeFi currently, like, do they compete with current global banking systems, or like, how are corporates or financial institutes looking at DeFi or working with you guys to, like, extend their services or, like, do something in crypto, right? Like, so how is your relation with the finance world or with mega corporations?
Well, it's a love and hate relationship, to be honest, in the sense that part of the traditional finance world understood that we are here to basically kill them as they exist today. And that's something that is very clear to me. I'm in DeFi in order to change the financial world and to make it easier for the end users. But it doesn't mean that when I say kill traditional finance, I say kill it as it exists today. So traditional finance can evolve and will evolve. And I think the financial institution that will adapt to the DeFi opportunities will have more opportunities to profit in the future. And we have a good example of that, of institution coming into DeFi, because obviously, like last time I checked, like DeFi was $200 to $220 billion. So yeah, like in this range market, and that's not something that you can create only with like the pockets of retails. Obviously, you need big actor to reach this kind of numbers. So let's face it, like institutions are already in DeFi, and institution is a very broad word. So maybe it's not your local bank, but it's maybe like big market makers. Maybe it's hedge funds, this kind of actors. And that's something that we are seeing with institution-focused DeFi products, such as Aave Arc, which is the Aave version, the Aave protocol version that is designed for financial institution with Fireblocks, which is a regulated custodian, and also SIBA, which is a regulated financial institution in Swiss that act as whitelister of those markets. And those markets are growing. We have like on Aave Arc, we have onboarded 70 institutions, some of them in Europe, some of them elsewhere. Some of them are like family office, others are actual financial institution. But what we are seeing right now is that they are testing the grounds. So the amounts in Aave Arc and other likewise protocol are not quite huge compared to like the regular permissionless DeFi, but they are steadily growing. And what I want to say from my experience, because I work on this subject directly myself, is that the hardest part of onboarding an institution is to reach the point where they deposit their first dollar. Because in order for an institution to understand what crypto is, how to convert, contact a Circle to convert some USD into USDC, for example, and how to have some kind of custodian wallet They can do transaction, they can whitelist smart contract, they can actually deposit one USDC into the Aave Arc smart contract. It's basically 85% of the work. Because the 15% that remains, because to reach that point, you need to go through like compliance and whatever and process. And financial institutions have a lot of inertia because they are big actors. And it's the law of physics. The bigger you are, the more inertia you are. And it's the same thing for entities at the end of the day. And what we are seeing right now in ARC is that I would say that 15 to 25% of the onboarding institution have reached this point of depositing their first dollar, and the other one are still in the process. And once they deposit their first dollar, it's having the internal green lighting to actually depositing serious amount.
All right. All right. That makes sense. I have pinned, one of your French charts, which you just did, today, 35% yield on Aave. So I just want to talk about, how did you get into making these charts? And I think they've been, outperforming most of the tweets you do, right? To give you guys context, if you don't know, Marc makes these amazing charts where, and I think in the most clear way, it's explained, how you can earn high yield on, let's say, stable coins on Aave. And he generally does it on platforms with, lower cost involved. That means not necessarily Ethereum mainnet. So, first of all, we love it. It's amazing. It's very easy for, someone to understand, because everyone thinks, DeFi is pretty complex, but the way you break it down in your French charts, it looks very simple. First question, what made you start doing this? And so that's the question.
So the short answer is that I did the French chart because I was like a bit annoyed by all the people that send me DM, and they're still doing it. I love you guys, but I cannot answer like 50 or 70 DM per day that say, hey, what do you think of this opportunity? Hey, how do I do deposit in this? When you have an account with like some kind of audience, I'm not a huge account, but my audience is enough for creating this kind of effect. You have a lot of people that will ask you questions out of the blue, and it's a good thing. We should remain as an ecosystem accessible. Obviously, I cannot answer to everybody all the time because otherwise I would not work, and I have an actual work. I'm not paid to do the French art. I execute the French art myself and I make money out of it. But outside of that, I have a full-time job at Aave, and I have other stuff to do to be like the DeFi support for everybody. And I was a bit annoyed by all the questions I had. So I was like, okay, let's try to have a simple way to describe how DeFi work. And drawing something is like one of the most accessible way to describe complex or not complex, at least money Legos. And the French art started that way. It was also my discovery of Escalidro, which is the website escalidro.com, the website I used to make the French art. That was so easy to use that it was a good way to create the French art with it. And the third way is that if you are looking, like if you dig the French art hashtag and you dig most of the French art I did, there's one very common denominator between all those strategies is that I use ChDAO. And I'm a huge fan of the ChDAO protocol. And Benjamin from ChDAO is in the Twitter space, and I salute you, Ben. I'm a huge fan of the ChDAO protocol. And their ability to onboard new assets, their governance, I'm part of the Chi Wars with Scotchy Vault and all the stuff I do. And that was my way, because I know that when you post something on Twitter that allows people to make money, usually you have some success and some engagement. And as you said, my French shorts are probably my tweets with the most engagement. It was a good way to make some advertising for the CheatDAO protocol. And I don't believe in cheating like stuff directly. I've never been paid to actually tweet something. And because I think the most effective way to put the spotlight on the protocol you like is to actually show that you can have good opportunity with that protocol. And that's basically what I did with CheatDAO and the French art. Obviously, sometimes there's opportunity that doesn't involve CheatDAO, so it's not exclusive to CheatDAO, but it was one of the reasons I made the French art.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that. I think I'll just ask a little bit just to understand, not related to DeFi or anything. How is the community in France? Right. First, quick question: are you from France? Like, I assume.
Yeah, it's very hard to hide that with my accent now.
Yeah, no. I did not want to assume, right? Like, I mean, I thought like you are, but I just wanted to be clear, right? Like, so, how is the crypto community in France? Can you tell us a little bit about?
Well, the community in France is huge. Like the French-speaking community in DeFi is actually very, very active and big. And I can see a lot of French in the Twitter space. So you guys, you can have like the clap reaction or the heart reaction. If you're French, feel free to do like a heart or a clap reaction, and you will see there's a lot of reaction that is happening there. We French are absolutely everywhere, and especially in DeFi. And when you go actually to crypto conference, I was at the Avalanche conference in Barcelona, less than a week ago, and you had French absolutely everywhere. So that's a good thing to know. And the community in crypto, and especially in the Ethereum ecosystem, because most of DeFi are on EVM networks, so it doesn't have to be Ethereum, but it can be Polygon, for example, Avalanche, Phantom, or the other guys. It's used the Ethereum technology, and the Ethereum community in France is quite old because it started with Ethereum France under the name Asset, which stands for Ethereum Association in French, and it started in 2015, so quite early in the Ethereum world. And then you have a huge Cosmos community in France as well, and then other communities. So there's a lot of meetups, there's a lot of conference. The biggest European conference is done in France. It's called the LCC. The next one is in July. That's the 5th edition. So already 5 years that every year they are gathering like 1,000 and more people around the Ethereum ecosystem. So quite big, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, and nice to see so many people here who are French. So nice to hear that. So Marc, I have a damn it, I missed that question. I think it was something absurd only. Okay, so yeah. I want to ask you about your opinions on DeFi 2.0, and like protocol owned liquidity, and like was it just a meme? Is it dead, or do you see something coming out of this entire wave which will help shape future of DeFi?
Well, it becomes as a huge surprise to to some people, and they maybe only realized that like a few weeks ago when the whole thing collapsed. But guess what? You cannot pay 7,000% yield to people all the time forever. So I know it's a bit shocking, but in the real world, it's called a Ponzi. And basically, Ponzi collapsed. But that's like the funny part, and obviously it was not meant to last. I think like some people learn a valuable lesson if they were not aware of how finance work, and you cannot pay 7,000 people to people all the time in a sustainable way. But let's stay optimistic and let's all try to learn from what happened with this so-called DeFi 2.0. We learned the really importance of having alternative way to attract liquidity and to get liquidity for protocols alternative to liquidity mining. So basically, the summer of DeFi it started in June 2020 when Compound released their token, the Comp token, and decided to basically pay people to deposit some asset into Compound.finance. In 2021, Aave did the same with the safety module. So instead of just paying people that deposit into the protocol, the ecosystem reserve is paying people that protect the protocol with the safety module on top of the regular liquidity mining. But it started with this idea that you can subsidy liquidity. And obviously, no economical product can be sustainable if it's only based on subsidy. And the whole idea was to have those kind of subsidy program called liquidity mining for a year, 2 years, 4 years. So for Curve, it's 4 years, Compound is 4 years. Aave depends of the emission of the ecosystem reserve. So with the current emission, I think it's like 3 years, like 2.5 years, something like that. And every protocol started doing that. For example, SushiSwap with their vampire attack, it was basically Uniswap, like the first version of SushiSwap was just Uniswap v2, same code, everything the same, but they created a token and they did a liquidity mining program, and that was the base of their success. Obviously, SushiSwap evolved a lot since then and created new product, and now it's much more than just a fork, but it started that way. And that was like the spark of DeFi 1.0, like the summer of DeFi of 2020 that many people remember. And DeFi 2.0 started to introduce something that is quite interesting, the concept of bonding. And the concept of protocol-owned liquidity. The idea that the protocol should own its own liquidity and should be the liquidity provider of its native asset is something that will stick and something that is quite interesting because you can have this protocol-owned liquidity that can act as a facilitator of the liquidity of the native asset or asset inside the protocol. And that makes the protocol more resilient and that mitigates the issue of what we call mercenary capital. So people that just deposit for the yield, the people like me that does some French art or whatever, and yield farmers and whatever, to have something that is much more efficient. Because when you distribute like one native asset, $1 of native asset in DeFi 1.0, right now the figure is not that great. It's that you basically have to distribute around $3 to $3.5 of native assets in order to get $1 of protocol-owned liquidity with liquidity mining. With bonding, usually you basically sell as a protocol your native asset in exchange of bonding of LP tokens. And usually in DeFi 2.0, you add like 85, like $1 of native asset will net you between 75 to 85 cents of liquid token. So it's something that's much more efficient than liquidity mining to create protocol-owned liquidity. And that's something that we should remember. The way they implement that was to started with like crazy rebase token and 7,000% yield. But if you have the same logic with more sound and sustainable ways to do it, I think that's something that should remain. So obviously 99% of DeFi 2.0 is dead now and probably will never wake up again, even though I'm still a fan of Olympus DAO and I think it's closer to something that is a bit better now. But outside of that, if we keep this idea that protocol-owned liquidity is important, that will be learning from the past and applying that to have a better DeFi in the future.
Awesome. I thank you for sharing that. I learned a lot, but I'm a little sad, Mark, that 7,000 API is something I can't get. So like,
It's very sad. Sorry.
like I was, come on, man. I wanted to like enjoy that AP. Anyway, jokes apart. Thank you for sharing that. So like I think great points on like protocol owned liquidity as well, and I think that's another clip like what we can do and reshare it. Mark, tell us something. This is something I did not expect Aave to do. But like you guys have been talking about it for a very long time, and you went ahead and did it, right? Like, so you do believe in like decentralized social media, and like the team from Aave created something called Lens Protocol. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the idea of DeFi, decentralized finance, was to give back ownership of their assets, and it's the whole idea of like behind Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is the idea of giving back ownership to the people to their financial asset, and DeFi is an evolution on top of this idea that you can control yourself, your position, and your financial position in the market, and that's like the revolution of DeFi for the financial part. And the whole idea of Lens Protocol is to give back people ownership of the content they create online. Because right now we are having a Twitter space. It's a platform we don't control at all unless you have Twitter share. But as a user, and if you are not an accredited investor, that might be hard to reach Twitter share before the IPO. Obviously, the IPO has been done, but it's not the same valuation that in the early days. And you have no control on this Twitter space. Obviously, it's recorded, but if the Twitter servers or whatever decide to remove that or to delete my account, they can do it anytime they want, and there's little you can do about it. The idea of the Lens protocol is to bring back ownership of data and also focus on content creation and content monetization, because obviously the Aave team is very specialized in financial stuff and monetization of stuff. So if you want to you had for the past 6 to 9 months this idea of a lot of people that created DAO for everything. You had the Twitter DAO recently, a DAO, you buy an NFT and it controls a Twitter account that does tweets. Why not? I'm not sure it's great, but why not? You had the Constitution DAO, which was this crazy idea of bidding to buy a copy of the Constitution, and so on and so forth. And each time, usually these kind of groups are organized on Discord or on Twitters, and then they do some kind of fundraising on a separate platform with a smart contract and a website. They raise some money. That money goes to a multi-sig or in the best case scenario, or otherwise they just go to an address and somebody can run away with the money. And it's quite a complex process. Imagine a social media where you can do a tweet, for example, the French art that I did today, and you can say that this tweet now is a DAO and a vault, and if you send money there, the only thing that smart contract can do is to execute that strategy I just shared with that French art, and you will get a special token that is a share of this vault, and you can withdraw anytime, deposit anytime, and decide to do anything you want directly with one tweet. Or you can do let's support this kind of non-profit, and you can turn that tweet tweet. It's a weird name, but you get the idea on this platform, and you can turn that into a fundraising, or you can decide that this tweet is art and NFT, so you can have the idea to turning this post into an NFT and put it into auction. You can also have like many other stuff. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say or not, so I will not push too much into the feature of the Lens protocol. But you can also have your own social graph. So let's say my only passion in life is DeFi. It's a bit sad, but if I had like I don't know DeFi and something that is not related at all, like movie, maybe a part of my follower were not interested into crypto at all, and another part were interested into crypto. I can manage my social graph to make like special communities and tweet about my crypto stuff with the same accounts, but that will propagate only to the people that are interested to that. And when I tweet about movies, it will either propagate to everyone or propagate to only the people that like the movies and things like that. And that's also because you are in control of your social graph and you can decide how your data is propagated. Also, Lens being a decentralized protocol, anybody can build an app on top of it. So if you want to try out, it's on Polygon testnet. There's one application on top of the Lens protocol that is called Lenster. So it's lenster.xyz. And it's like the people that the creator that did Lenster basically replicated Twitter on top of the Lens protocol. So he implemented a few of the feature I described right now, but also other stuff, and it's quite fun to use. And you will see the UI and the UX is quite easy, and the developer that did that did a great job.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's quite like a lot of information about Lens protocol. I'm quite excited.
Yeah, maybe too much. Maybe I said too much, but I didn't say everything, so we should be good.
Yeah. Marc, if you want, like, so again, right, like we are recording this space. If you want us to redact anything, let me know.
No, it's fine. No worries.
We can do that. But like these 50-40 people hearing, we can't take that away, right? Like I don't have that MI3 laser. Anyway, Mr. Robot, I'll take your question. Okay, I think I can take your question very quickly. Go for it.
Okay, so I will be fast. So thanks to everyone. I had just a question to Marc, and I would like to know, since that we have the regulation of MiCA, I would like to know if we have more investors in France on the DeFi.
So MiCA doesn't really affect DeFi at all. So one of the components of the MiCA text is that they say that decentralized finance is outside the scope of MiCA. So that's one important thing. And MiCA, I see it, to give context, MiCA is like the current piece of legislation that is being voted by the European Union to regulate crypto assets. And it introduced like new possibilities, but also new limitation. So, for example, if you are service provider, like virtual asset service provider inside Europe, you will need to enforce more KYC process than what exists right now. But at the end of the day, I see it as the first steps into a more broad framework around crypto and decentralized finance in general. And there's always two sides to everything. So if you are pessimistic, you think that's more regulation and more limitation, and that will hurt the ecosystem. And if you are more seeing the thing with a larger scope, and I'm part of these guys, you will see that it's also a framework that limits and diminish the confusion and the unknown for financial institutions that are interested into DeFi but don't know how to onboard into DeFi in something that is inside the comfort zone of compliance and these kind of things. And having a framework is better for business than having nothing and just having the financial institutions that are spooked by the whole crypto ecosystem because they don't know what's the regulation and the context in terms of in these terms around it. So there's several ways to do it. To answer your question, Mika doesn't affect, at least in the current form, and it's still up to vote and up to have like some revision in the text. But in its current form, it has a low impact on decentralized finance activities.
Thanks a lot.
So I seen like a lot of crazy text like this day, like you will need to KYC to do a swap on Uniswap. No, that doesn't exist.
No. I saw that the was talking a lot about wallet, NFT, but not on DeFi. So
So DeFi is outside of the scope of the Mika, and that's for sure. What they call unhosted wallet, which is a terrible name, by the way, because when you own your credit key, your private key, that means that you have. It doesn't make sense to call that an unhosted wallet, but whatever. The impact of the revision that was done and voted recently is that basically when you withdraw from a virtual service asset provider, more than €1,000, which is not a huge amount, to be honest. It's less than minimum wage in France. You will need to specify the identity of that wallet. So if you withdraw from, I don't know which, whatever VASP to your ledger, you will need to specify to that virtual service asset provider directly that this ledger belongs to you. And that's basically it. After, you can do whatever with those assets, but you will have to know that it's noted somewhere that this address belongs to you. But I want to remind everybody that if you exchange some euro to crypto or some fiat to crypto, it's very likely that you already did some KYC. And obviously, centralized exchange or service provider, they have your identity and they know where you withdraw your money. So it just give more context to something that was already a possibility. Because if you withdraw from Kraken to your ledger, they have a good guess that that ledger belongs to you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Robot. I just want to say hi to Amit, who's from TimeSwap. And a lot of interesting people here. Just want to say hi to all of you as well.
Hey, Neeraj. Hey. I had one question for Marc.
Go for it.
Hey, Marc, how are you? Actually, I have two questions.
That's a good question. I'm good. And you, sir? Not too bad.
So did I run out of my quota of questions?
I'll change the space name to...
We grant you a second question. It's fine.
So my question is obviously you've been around DeFi for a long time. So like today, obviously during DeFi summer, it was very exciting. You're seeing new things every other day. So from throwing back to those times, today, what kind of stuff are you seeing in DeFi that's intellectually exciting to you? It's giving you that, feeling of something new and exciting that you want to explore within DeFi.
Well, obviously we're going to talk about TimeSwap, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks. That was the whole point. Thank you.
That was the point. Okay, I take the bait. The bait. So one of the limiting factors right now in DeFi is that DeFi was quite successful to create decentralized finance in the sense that you have those protocols, at least the major ones, that are not owned and controlled by only one entity, unless your name is Sifu and you are doing like wonder, whatever. That was a bad joke, but. In DeFi, that is true to the name decentralized finance, with emphasis on the term decentralized. Like for example, at Aave, there's no button on my keyboard or no function in the smart contract of Aave that I can call and unilaterally without the consultation of the Aave governance onboard a new asset into the protocol, or change the interest rate strategy, or liquidate a user, or withdraw some money from the protocol. Obviously, that's not possible, and it will be terrible if that was an option. And DeFi was like quite successful to create a resilient, decentralized protocol that evolved through governance. And basically, most of these decentralized finance protocols created their native asset, or already are their native asset. So you have the Aave token for Aave, you have the Comp token for Compound, you have the Uni token for Uniswap, and so on and so forth, the Sushi and so on. And if you want this protocol to evolve, like for example, onboard a new asset, you need to go through a governance process. And the governance process was quite standardized, and we have to recognize the work of MakerDAO into that, because they were like the oldest DeFi protocol to adapt that model and to have like a truly resilient and standardized governance process with like their MIP model, which stands for Maker Improvement Proposal, and all the DeFi protocols did the same thing. So instead of MIP, you have AIP, so Aave Improvement Protocol on Aave. If you go to ChiDAO on their snapshot, you have a key QIP, so ChiDAO Improvement Proposal right now for the Gauge voting and the Chi Wars. So if you have some Chi, please vote for the Ghost. I'm doing some kind of advertising at the same time, why not? And it was quite interesting because it's resilient, it's decentralized, and it's really permissionless in the sense that you don't have like any entity directly in control of the protocol. The flip side of that, and the drawback of that, is that it's super slow to answer, because to evolve, in the sense that you have this inertia that is created by the governance, and if you want to onboard a new asset overnight, even if all the community agrees, you still have to follow the standard. So if you want to have, for example, MAI into Aave, Polygon, and Phantom, which is like the vote happening right now, you need Benjamin, which is in this Twitter space, to create a governance thread in the Aave forum, which he did, wait 5 days, then do a snapshot vote, which he did. Wait 4 days, because you need 24 hours before the vote starts, and then 3 days to have the vote open. Then once you did all these steps, you can actually work on your AIP and do the on-chain vote, and that's one more week or 10 more days, and you need a huge quorum of tokens, and you need like to adapt on that. Same thing, if you want to change the risk parameter, so the way the interest rates evolve, you need that huge process. And that's something that is great because it's safe, and in the sense that nothing shitty can happen overnight. It's also democratic in the sense that any native governance token holder can have their voice in the governance forum, and you cannot be surprised overnight about new things. But it's shitty in the sense that if you want to adapt like super fast and take some risk, list new assets, change the risk parameters, change the LTV, that's not something you can do overnight. And sometimes it's super slow to move because you need to find like big token holders that will support your proposal and do basically protocol politics, which happen in DeFi. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not a super, super efficient thing. And that's where TimeSwap is introducing a new concept, because they are basically having elastic risk parameters inside their platform. So you can list an asset quite permissionlessly, and the LTV and the interest rate and the collateral factor will depend on the liquidity and actually to the market condition directly, continuously, without having the need to have a governance process that will changing and adapt to it. And you want to talk more about it directly because it's your protocol after all.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a stab at it, but my intention with that question honestly was not to shield times up. Honestly, the reason why I asked was like you scroll through Twitter, like every day you see like 10 new protocols getting launched. And I was basically outsourcing my research work to you to like filter out the best projects which I should research. But anyway, I'll take a stab at TimesUp. Yeah, so TimesUp is basically building the first fully decentralized money market. The goal is that, Marc explained in detail, that today, if you want to add a new asset to money markets, you have to go through the cumbersome governance process. Plus, the collateral factor, etc., is not really reactive to market. So, what we are trying to do is trying to build a money market that pretty much replicates what Uniswap did for the exchange market. So, on Uniswap, you have like an XY equals to K AMM, and what we are trying to build is adding a third parameter like an XYZ equals to K, which essentially will help you discover both the interest rate and the collateral factor for a lend or borrow transaction. So it's recently launched. Like we launched in Polygon like a couple of weeks back. Currently, we are offering the cheapest borrow rates on USDC on the entire Polygon network. So our second pool is obviously closing tomorrow. It's a fixed maturity protocol. So you have to launch pools with certain maturity. So we'll soon be launching a third pool, hopefully like early next week. And it's great to see the thesis and the theory that we had while building this protocol play out in the real time. So yeah, quite excited to onboard more people onto the platform, and looking forward to hearing the feedback from the wider community. Yeah,
thank you. And that's something quite interesting. And obviously, it's still the early days at TimesSwap, but that's definitely a protocol that I have on my radar. And maybe I will make friend chat with TimesSwap included in the future.
Yeah.
So stay tuned on my Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can pretty much guarantee that since, like in our case, essentially users are able to leverage on their lend side by taking on aggressive positions. Like currently, our lenders have been aggressively lending, and because of that, the borrow rates are like significantly low. Sorry, that's my cat in the background.
That's good.
That's not me. That's not me.
That's also an approach that we like having like more reflexivity and more adaptation. It's something that is important, and a big part that is not very well known for now of Aave V3, the new version of the Aave protocol that was launched like 2 weeks ago, something like that. With the introduction of new modes for the protocol. The first one is isolation mode, which allows to limit for an asset the amount of asset that can be deposited and also borrowed directly from the protocol. So basically, when you do that, you limit basically the risk. So you limit the size of the exposure of that collateral inside the protocol, and you limit also the risk if something goes down and goes very bad. And you make sure that one bad apple inside the full basket will not propagate bad things to the whole protocol, which make like the whole protocol more resilient and more safe. And another thing that is new is this concept of listing admin that is not implemented yet because we are a decentralized protocol. A lot of features of Aave V3 need to be activated by governance, and you can have in the future entities which probably going to be delegates of the governance that will have some kind of onboarding power for assets without having to go through the full governance process. So maybe you can have like a community multi-sig of that's just an idea. I'm not saying it's going to be that way because the governance decide, but a community multi-sig of significant delegates of the Aave governance ecosystem that will have the possibility to list any asset the community wants with a limit of debt of $5 million, for example. So instead of having to go through a huge AIP process that can take weeks, you can have this quick started with just one snapshot vote, and in 4 days it's done. And there's also another feature that is even more hidden, but it already exists in the code and is live, is that you have this concept of permissionless lending or siloed borrowing, where you can have even more limited deposit and borrow assets. But as the name implies, it's permissionless. So there's probably a future in a few weeks, in a few months, where any project can basically create a mini Aave inside the Aave protocol and decide to onboard an asset and to design also another asset that can be borrowed with that asset in that siloed borrowing, and provide liquidity, use that as collateral, and borrow directly the asset that is inside the system. And we think it's a great way to basically showcase the interest for an asset that might not have the liquidity or the volume requirement to have like a chain price feed. So you can use maybe instead time-weighted average price, or you can use like another source of Oracle for this kind of assets. And when the community and the market data shows that this asset is behaving relatively well, you have what we call this grow together approach. So one asset can start in siloed borrowing, completely in a permissionless way, then plead the case to the Aave governance to become isolated an exhalation mode asset with just a snapshot vote with limited borrow and supply caps. And if that succeeds, then you can go the third way and enable like the full governance process and basically remove all the cap and have it like any other asset. And what is interesting is that allows assets that right now are too small to be considered as collateral to basically get inside the Aave family, basically present themselves to the protocol and grow gradually within the protocol to become like fully fledged collateral assets. And that's quite interesting. And I think that's the future of DeFi, maybe DeFi 3.0, when you have those resilient, safe protocol, but also adaptable and flexible protocols that allows anybody to grow together in synergy between the DeFi protocols.
So basically then Fuse as non-competition, or you guys are going to kill Fuse?
I don't think like the whole DeFi protocol is so small that there's space for everyone. But it's basically the way to, instead of like a lot of assets start in Rari Capital, so Fuse or a provider like that. And when they grew enough liquidity, they try to do the governance to join other protocols. It will be an alternative option. So instead of starting with Fuse, you can do Fuse and Aave at the same time and see how you can grow. And when you grow, you start with a Fuse-like siloed borrowing, and then you grow to isolation mode, or you grow directly to like a regular collateral. It's just an alternative. It's a different way to do things, and the way it's done on Aave V3 is that it's a natural path progression. It's a grow together approach and synergy approach, in the sense that you don't have to fractionalize liquidity. Because I love Rari Capital, like they are great guys, and Fuse protocol. But the issue is that there's like, 40 or 50 different pools, and a lot of them don't have the liquidity that might be interesting for big players to actually borrow, because you have this concept in decentralized finance of what I will call critical mass liquidity. So if you don't have enough stable coins, for example, the whales will not come to deposit into your protocol and borrow, because they don't want to pay like 70% interest rate with their DAI borrowing or USDC borrowing, because their size will mean that they will basically shoot the interest up super high, because they will take almost all available liquidity. And basically, until you reach a specific critical mass, which change with the market condition, it's very hard for a decentralized finance liquidity protocol to attract users and basically grow their market size. With this concept of sealed borrowing, which is like very limited, then isolation mode. When you are in isolation mode, you still have access to the full liquidity. So it's limited in the amount you can borrow or you can deposit, but it's the same liquidity than the full Aave protocol. So you have access to 20 and more billion dollars. So you don't have this liquidity fragmentation issue.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think you answered my, the last question I was gonna ask anyway. Guys, if anyone has quick questions, do ask before Marc is like, Dheeraj, I'm gonna kill you for extending this. Do request, and till then, just want to give shout out to everyone who's here: Adeep, Mythos, Sebastian, Benjamin, Cosmo, Ichi, Betin, and all you guys, right? Like, thank you for being here. I think a lot of you have been here since the starting hour, so thank you for being here. If you're new to this show we called Web3 with Dhee, I host these Twitter spaces thrice a week. We talk to amazing people like Marc and a lot of other people to learn about NFTs, DeFi, scaling solutions, DAOs, and just like interesting things happening on Web3. Do follow me. And if you learned anything out of this, go reshare this, tag me, tag Marc, and let us know that, like, hey, I learned something, or hey, that was an interesting point. So, we understand what's happening. So I think as no one is requesting, I will ask Marc a final question, and it's a simple one. You can give a yes or no answer, or you can expand on it. Marc, is DeFi dead? Marc, unmute yourself.
Marc is dead.
I'm dead. I think like a good way to answer like a bad question would be to say that DeFi 1.0 is dead, in the sense that just providing liquidity and taking liquidity is like lending and borrowing, like you said at the beginning. It's too limited to describe DeFi now, and that's a good thing, because I think that was very limited, and finance is a lot of other stuff, and there's a lot of different opportunities. DeFi 2.0 is dead because, shockingly, paying 7,000% yield to people is not sustainable. But DeFi 3.0 is about to grow and to arrive, in the sense that you will have more flexible protocol, more ways to use liquidity as a service, like for example the portals of Aave v3, time swap, adaptative risk parameters. You will have like CHIDAO new product as well. I'm a big fan, so I'm doing like advertising for the other project as well. And I think like a lot of protocols are creating new stuff. There's also this component that we are in the multi-blockchain world right now. So if your protocol is only on Ethereum, I think that's a very limiting factor these days, because you basically DeFi for the rich, and traditional finance is already finance for the rich. So there's no added value to do only DeFi for the rich. So it's interesting to be on other protocol where the transaction fee are more accessible. But also when you are on other protocols, it's not all about transaction fees, also about the other ecosystem. Like, for example, on Phantom, you have a lot of yield farming opportunities, a lot of degen stuff, and something that is a bit more risky than what you will find traditionally on Ethereum. But there's plenty of opportunity that you can only find on the Phantom ecosystem. Polygon, most of the projects, like all the projects we talked today, were present and are present on Polygon. There's a lot of gaming and also DeFi activity on Polygon, and that's my go-to platform and network when I want to present things that are accessible to everyone, because that's the alternative layer 1 or the layer 2, the sidechain. If you want to present it that way, that is the most accessible of all of them in terms of transaction fee. Like I rarely pay more than 2 cents to do a transaction on Polygon. You also have Avalanche with a lot of new things, like Subnet are quite interesting. So you have this DeFi 3.0, which has less inertia in terms of governance than the 1.0 things that we used to have, that has new ways to maximize the efficiency of liquidity, that is focused on the blockchain multiverse with features such as portals and multi-blockchain position that are coming soon. Maybe I should not say that, but whatever. It's not, maybe I talk too much with you. I will get like I will have some issue after this space, and also new products, and it's maybe one of the best time to onboard into DeFi, in the sense that a lot of the Ponzi stuff are gone now. All the noise and the bad actors and the actors that wanted just to extract for themselves and control and have a very centralized vision are gone now. And know that we are in a period that is more calm. Usually when it's more calm in terms of market and in terms of visible activity, it's the best time to onboard in an ecosystem, because that's where the nose is clear and you have the signal from the builders, and you start to learn things and see cool stuff that will make a lot of noise in the next few months and being built in real time.
Yeah, thank you, Marc, for sharing that. And it's okay, right? Like, you can talk as much. I'm glad, right? Like you're talking.
I'm sharing too much alpha.
Yeah, I'm glad, like, you are able to talk freely, and like, this is a safe space, unless like, I mean, yeah, most of the time, right? Like, so thank you for sharing your opinions and your thoughts. I loved like, talking to you and like learning so much which I did not know about, be it Aave, DeFi, or like, your general thoughts, because you think about this 24/7. You are like, the one of the oldest people I know who's in DeFi, who's building. So it's quite interesting to see like, you do this, and I'm super proud of you with all the content you're creating, all the things you post. Some of them are funny, most of it is super like, informative, and it's just nice that, like, we got to do this, because just to give you context, everyone, we've been trying to do like a podcast or a Twitter Spaces for the longest time. I think it's been 6-8 months. Like, first I reached out to Marc, and I was like, hey, let's do a podcast. He's like, he did not respond to me. Like, he said yes, and then he did not respond to me, which is okay, right? Like, yeah, it happens.
I'm sorry for that. It's just that I have like so many messages every day. Like, you cannot imagine.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. I see so many Stanny messages, right? Like, when he needs like some few ETH or 2 BNB because he's locked out of wallet. Just kidding. And then, like, Marc was very nice. He's like, Dheeraj, whenever you want to do whatever, let's do it. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I never got back to Marc. So it's been both the sides. But finally we got to do this. Thank you, Marc. Thank you for sharing your journey on Web3 with Dhee. Guys, if you're not following Marc, go follow. If you're not following me, go follow. And yeah, Marc, do you want to say anything?
Well, thank you for having me on this Twitter space, and to everybody that is listening, feel free to do your homework. As I always say, the French will recognize this punchline. I always say in the French community. Faites vos devoirs. I say it in French.
Awesome. So glad you are building the future of France, and thank you everyone for attending. We're ending. Just want to give shout out to Marc for coming here, being here, Amit for asking wonderful questions and doing amazing stuff at times. Time swap. Ashutosh for helping me out. All you guys, Key Protocol, Benjamin, Mythosispers, Adeep, all you guys. I see all of you being here since starting and listening to us. If you like what we do follow me. If you like what Marc does, do follow him or follow us either way. And adios and GM, everyone. Take care. Have fun. Bye-bye.